The technology has turned into ghost, as previously the trade or ghost criminals, as previously we can say the trade which required physical interaction, but the use of mobiles or social media sites has made their presence unseen. Besides, can attract their customer easily without making authorities to know them. Many online sites contain various job advertisement within and outside the country. Most of the time, knowing the genuineness of these sites is not feasible, as some of them are not traceable even. The job offered for working in parlors, jobs of receptionist, housekeeping, babysitters outside the country leads women into trap of traffickers. There are certain sites luring women in India for offering sex services to their client. This website provides a platform for girls or women to interact with customers and to get associated with them in prostitution market, such as Locendo, Adult Job, One Man, etc. Although these sites are directly dealing with prostitution, some of the girls publicized on the sites are not voluntarily involved in the prostitution business but are victims of trafficking. Sometimes traffickers uses the fake identities, and sometimes they present themselves to be entrepreneur, or sometimes they present to be as a global recruiter, but in guise they are indulged in sex trafficking. Most of the people are unable to distinguish between prostitution and trafficking, and therefore when women are advertised and prostitute as prostitutes on site deceitfully, they are not victims. Thus, it becomes difficult for the authorities to know the true identity of such individuals, as to whether they are victims who have been forced into the prostitution or they are willing participants until the evidence of trafficking is discovered. The result of sex trafficking is in general prostitution, and prostitution is the objective of sex trafficking. So the next part is after what, why, and how. The next part of discussion is international mandates, treaties, and convention, which actually can address the issues of trafficking, human trafficking, or sex trafficking, and how they actually contains the provision to address this particular problem or the global problem. There is a huge list that can paint a picture of the seriousness of this crime and concern of global governance. The first comprehensive and global legally binding instrument to fight international organized crime and list the offenses which are transnational in nature is United Nations Convention against Transnational Organized Crime and its protocol to prevent, suppress, and punish trafficking in persons, especially women and children. This instrument was ratified by the Government of India in May 2011. The purpose of this convention is to promote cooperation to prevent and combat transnational organized crime more effectively. The convention contains principles of extradition, mutual legal assistance, joint investigations, and special investigative techniques. It deliberates upon measures to enhance cooperation with law enforcement authorities, law enforcement cooperation, collection, exchange, and analysis of information on the nature of organized crime, and training and technical assistance. The second document is the part of the protocol, and this protocol is protocol to prevent, suppress, and punish trafficking in persons, especially women and children, which is a supplementing protocol to the United Nations Convention against Transnational Organized Crime. The protocol declares that effective action to prevent and combat trafficking in persons, especially women and children, requires a comprehensive international approach in the countries of origin, transit, and destination. That includes measures to prevent such trafficking, to punish the traffickers, and to protect the victims of such trafficking. The protocol renders the consent of victim of trafficking in person irrelevant. The second protocol is United Nations Protocol against the smuggling of migrants by land, sea, and air. This is also a supplementing protocol to United Nations Convention. The protocol declares that effective action to prevent and combat the smuggling of migrants by land, sea, and air requires a comprehensive international approach, which includes cooperation, exchange of information, and other appropriate measures, including socio-economic measures at the national, regional, and international levels. The protocol does not directly apply with the trafficking of a person for sexual exploitation or prostitution, but it makes evident via Article 3 and 5 that the smuggling of a person in forced document of travel for financial or material benefit attracts the criminal offense under the instrument. Then comes the Slavery Convention. This was signed at Geneva on 25th September 1926 and is intended to complete separation of slavery in all forms and slave trade by land and sea. The supplementary convention of the on the abolition of slavery, the slave trade and institution and practice similar to slavery 1956 is another very important instrument which mandates the state parties to adopt necessary legislative and other measures at the earliest to compete for the abolishment of slavery as contained in Article 1 of the Slavery Convention 1926. The convention also seeks to abolish any institution or a practice where a woman is forcefully given in a marriage on payment of consideration of money or kind of her parents, guardian, family, or where the woman is transferred to another person for a value received by her husband, parents, or family, or after the death of the husband, a woman is animus precedendi of another. So, in some way out, this appears that this particular supplementary convention is prohibiting the slavery on the women slavery or sex slavery. Then, United Nations Global Initiative to Fight Human Trafficking, that is UN.GIFT. This was launched on 26 March 2007. UN Gift is managed by United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime in cooperation with the International Labour Organization, the International Organization for Migration, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, and the United Nations Children Fund. This UN gift aims at eradicating human trafficking through mobilizing state and non-state actors to reduce vulnerability and demand for exploitation of potential victims and to ensure support and protection to the victims. There are certain other international mandates which includes the United Nations Convention for Separation of the Traffic in Persons and the Exploitation of the Prostitution of Others 1949. This is focused on abolition of prostitution and it states in its preamble that prostitution and the accompanying evil of the traffic in persons for the purpose of prostitution are incompatible with the dignity and worth of the human person and endanger the welfare of the individual, the family, and the community. The anti-trafficking laws of India is enacted in pursuance of this convention only. Then comes the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW, which was entered into force on 3rd September 1981. In order to have a full and complete development of a country and thereby the welfare of the world in peace, the convention intends the maximum participation of women on equal terms with men in all fields. It gives positive affirmation to the principles of equality by rendering state parties to take all appropriate measures, including legislation, to ensure the full development and advancement of women for the purpose of guaranteeing them the exercise and enjoyment of human rights and fundamental freedom on a basic equality with men. The next is the Internet. Watch Foundation (IWF). The goal of IWF is minimizing child sexual abuse content anywhere in the world. This body operates on online hotline to enable anyone worried about a potentially illegal site to report their concern. Then Virtual Global Task Force, that is VGT 2003. This is a group of law enforcement agencies from around the world who collaborate together to stop child pornography online. The objective of VGT is to make internet a safer place, safeguarding children's rights, protecting children, and ensuring justice. The protocol of CR on safety of child
Ma'am,
prostitution and child
excuse me,
consumption.
ma'am.
The Convention on the Rights of the Child is the main international instrument.
Ma'am,
Yes.
sorry to disturb you, ma'am.
Hello. Am I
Ma'am,
audible? Faisal?
I think internet issue is there from your end. We are not able to hear you properly.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am, now it's okay.
Right. Uh, I hope my
So
PPTs are.
sorry to disturb you, ma'am.
Oh no, that's fine.
Like your voice was okay. So sorry, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Whether my slides are visible to everyone?
Yes, ma'am, it's visible. It's visible.
Okay, so the next document is optional protocol second of CRC on safety of child prostitution and child pornography 2002. This convention on the rights of the child, that is CRC, is the main international instrument for the protection of children's right from all forms of abuse, violence, neglect, and exploitation, and entrusts a responsibility on the state parties to protect children from all forms of sexual exploitation and sexual abuse. This optional protocol of CRC emphatically states that there is a requirement to criminalize the sale of a child for the purpose of sexual exploitation. The protocol aims to eliminate the sale of children, child prostitution, and child pornography by adopting a holistic approach and addressing the contributing factors, including underdevelopment, poverty, economic disparity, inequitable socioeconomic structure, dysfunctioning families, lack of education, urban-rural migration, gender discrimination, irresponsible adult sexual behavior, harmful traditional practice, conflict, and trafficking in children. And the next international instrument is the Council of European Convention on Cybercrime 2001. This convention was open for signature in Budapest. So, because it was open in Budapest, makes it known as Budapest Convention. This was open for signature on November 2001, and is the only convention on cybercrime today. This aims principally at harmonizing the domestic criminal substantive law, elements of offenses, and connected provisions in the area of cybercrime, providing for domestic criminal procedural laws, powers necessary for the investigation and prosecution of such offenses, as well as other offenses committed by means of a computer system or evidence in electronic form. The third objective is setting up a fast and effective regime of international cooperation. So the convention under various provisions criminalizes various aspects of electronic production, possession, distribution of child pornographic materials through computer data storage system or any means of an electronic device. The convention directs the state to incorporate the provisions of liability on corporation, associations, and similar legal provisions, and similar legal persons to the criminal actions. Then we will discuss the Indian skeleton or regulatory architecture for control of human trafficking. This has actually evolved over the years and consists of many laws and regulations shaped in the light of the commitments that our country has undertaken under the international treaties. I will start with the basic land law of our country, that is the Constitution of India. The Constitution of India in part 3rd provides right to life and personal liberty, right to live with the dignity, right to certain freedoms, and most importantly, right against exploitation and prohibition against trafficking in human beings and forced labor, such as begar. Article 23 of Indian Constitution prohibits traffic in human beings and forced labor and makes contravention of the provision of punishable offence. Whereas Article 24 of Constitution of India prohibits employment of children in factories, etc. And trafficking in person is a crime against humanity, amounts to violation of human rights in India. There are various forms of trafficking, and each category carries one consistent aspect, that is, the abuse of the inherent vulnerability of the victims. So, we'll start with discussing certain Indian enactments or statutes that actually handles the issues of trafficking as well as sex trafficking, and we'll find out to what extent they are applicable. They are applicable in the issues in the matter of cyber sex trafficking. So the first law is the Immoral Traffic Prevention Act 1956. Under the authority and via force of the provisions enshrined in the Constitution under Article 23, the legislature passed the Immoral Traffic Prevention Act 1956 as the first legislation for prevention of trafficking for commercial sexual exploitation. The law was amended several times to bring the statute in the line with the requirements of various conventions signed by the country. The act legalizes the practice of prostitution in private, but is not permitted to ask for or seduce customers openly. Now, what is the status of brothel? The act makes keeping a brothel or allowing premises to be used as a brothel punishable. Intentional permitting of the premises to be employed for the purpose of a brothel or granting permission with knowledge are punishable under the act. Section 4 of the act is an important provision, and it makes it living on the earning of prostitution a punishable act. So indirectly covering a person who is doing this, who is actually running this business. Under Section 5 of the act, procuring, inducing, or taking person for the sake of prostitution is a punishable act. Even consent of the same will not make it valid. On the other hand, if offense is committed against the will of a person, then by virtue of sub clause 1D, an imprisonment of 7 years, which may extend to 14 years, is attracted. If offense is committed against a child, the imprisonment shall not be less than 7 years and may extend up to life imprisonment. If it is against a minor, the punishment may extend rigorous imprisonment from not less than 7 years up to 14 years. Section 6 of the Act makes detaining a person with or without the consent in any premises where prostitution is carried out uh, on a carried on is a punishable act. This section 6 imposes a punishment of imprisonment not less than 7 years and not more than that of life imprisonment for a term or for a term which may extend to 10 years along with fine uh, to anyone who detains. The section imposes the same punishment to a person with a child in a brothel if a child or minor found in a brothel and after the medical examination of the child is found to be sexually abused. Then the court will take the presumption that such child was commercially exploited for the purpose of prostitution. The offense under the acts are cognizable and hence An arrest without a warrant could be made only by a special officer or under his direction, guidance, or prior approval in writing. The special police officers can conduct a search without a warrant with two respectable inhabitants from the locality, and if any person refuses to cooperate the search as a witness, shall be committing the offence under section 187 of Indian Penal Code. The next act, it's not an act, basically this is a bill. The name of the bill is the Trafficking of Persons Prevention, Protection and Rehabilitation Bill 2018. This bill was introduced in the Lok Sabha on July 18, 2018 and passed on July 26, 2018 in the Lok Sabha only. But the bill is still pending. There are certain highlights which I think should be discussed to tell you how serious the offense is going to be. So, the bill creates a law for investigation of all types of trafficking and rescue, protection, and rehabilitation of trafficked victims. The bill provides for the establishment of investigation and rehabilitation authorities at the district, state, and national level. Anti-trafficking units (ATU) will be established by the bill to rescue victims and investigate cases of trafficking. So rehabilitation committees will also be there, and that will provide care and rehabilitation to the rescued victims. The bill classified certain purposes of trafficking as aggravated form of trafficking. These include trafficking for forced labor, bearing children, bagging, or for inducing early sexual maturity. This is very serious and heinous crime, and number of time it came into news that they are using the medicines for the purpose of early sexual maturity. So this bill is designed to cover these issues as well separately. Aggravated trafficking attracts a higher punishment. The bill sets out penalties for several offences connected with trafficking. In most cases, the penalties set out are higher than the punishment provided under the prevailing laws on trafficking. This law I also feel is very much important to be discussed. That is Prohibition of Child Marriage Act 2006, and because women are also trafficked with the concealed motive in the name of marriages. The Act defines a child under Section 2A as a person who, if a male has not completed 21 years of age and if a female has not completed 18 years of age. Thus, if either of the contracting party to the marriage is a child, such a marriage falls under the definition of Child Marriage Act, and under this act solemnization of child marriage is a punishable offense, and the punishment will be 2 years and fines. The nature of the offenses is that it is cognizable and non-billable. The next important act is the Juvenile Justice Care and Protection Act 2000. Several provisions of the Constitution of India in Part 3rd and Part 4th, which includes Clause 3 of Article 15, Clause E and F of Article 39, Article 45 and Article 47, imposes on the state a primary responsibility to ensure the needs of children are met and their basic human rights are protected. The act was based on the standard prescribed by the Convention on Child Rights, that is CRC, the United Nations Minimum Rules for the Administration of Juvenile Justice 1985, also known as the Beijing Rules, and the United Nations Rules for the Protection of Juvenile Deprived of Their Liberty 1990, and all other relevant international instruments. Then the next is the section uh, with regard to the provisions of Juvenile Justice Care and Protection Act. There are certain sections which bars publicity of the juvenile, which includes pictures by any mass media, printed or electronic, for an inquiry or the of the juvenile with the purpose of identification, unless the permission for so is obtained from the appropriate authority, stating reason in writing. The Act also prohibits and makes punishable cruelty to juvenile or child by a person who has actual charge, or control over juvenile or the child. The Act provides penalty for giving intoxicating liquor or narcotic drugs or psychotropic substance to juvenile or child if administered without the prescription from a qualified medical practitioners or other than in the case of sickness introduced. So if the juvenile is sick, this can be done, but cannot be done if it is a liquor or narcotic drugs or psychotropic substance. The offences are punishable and shall be cognizable. There is also a provision for alternative punishment. So, when the offence falls under this Act as well as any of the state or central act, then in such circumstances, the Act which provides greater punishment applies. The report of the probation officer or social worker considered by the competent authority shall be treated as confidential. Then, POXO, that is Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act 2012. This is a special law which has been passed to address the issues of sexual offences against children in accordance to the clause 3 of article 15 of Constitution of India, which empowers the state to make special provision in respect of children, and the Convention of Rights of the Child, that is against CRC, adopted by the General Assembly of United Nations, and which prescribes a set of standards to be followed by the state parties in securing the best interest of the child. The act was enacted. The Act first time defines certain heinous offences against child that includes sexual assault, sexual harassment, and pornography, and to provide for the establishment of special courts for the trial of such offences. The Act provides punishment for penitative sexual assault and aggravated penitative sexual assault, and the section provides punishment if offenses committed by the person expected to take care of them, including the offenses at the service of child and society. The Act defines sexual assault and sexual harassment and their punishment also. So, using child or children for pornographic purpose is also punishable, and storage of pornographic material involving a child for commercial purposes is punishable with imprisonment for a term up to 3 years or with fine of it both. Then comes the Indian Penal Code. It's an old act, and under its various provision covers different activities relating to women sex trafficking, such as kidnapping from India, which is punishable under section 363. The punishment is 7 years and fine. Indian Penal Code made importation of girls from foreign countries punishable under section 366b. The section is extraterritorial in nature. For invoking the provision of this section, the girl who is imported from outside India must be below the age of 21 years. Procuration of minor girl is punishable under section 366A. This section came into force on 1st May 1924 and is intended to punish import or export of girls for prostitution, an intentional kidnapping or abducting in order to subject a person to grievous hurt, slavery, or for the gratification of unnatural lust of any person is punishable under section 367 of IPC. Even a wrongful concealing or keeping in confinement, kidnapped or abducted person is also punishable under section 368. To invoke this section, the person in question must be kidnapped or abducted, and the accused should have this information. Buying or disposing of any person as a slave is punishable by the court. This section aims at suppression of slavery. The section punishes importing, exporting, buying, selling, or disposing of a person as a slave. Even habitual dealing in slaves is punishable under section 371 of IPC. Selling minor for the purpose of prostitution, etc., is punishable. In case of a minor, the burden of proof lies on the accused. This section is in consonance with Article 23 of Indian Constitution. So buying minor for the purpose of prostitution is punishable. Although sexual operations are currently covered under various sections of Indian Penal Code, yet Indian Penal Code is inadequate to punish all the sexual offences. In particular, it is not able to cover the issues or the problem caused by the information and communication technologies. The cyber in law in India. So that is Information Technology Act 2000. The Information Technology Act 2000 is based on the United Nations Model Law on Electronic Commerce of 1996. The Information Technology Act 2000 is the only law in India which governs the electronic communication and offences committed by means of devices. The Act makes violation of privacy punishable under Section 66E. Accordingly, if anyone intentionally or knowingly captures, publishes, or transmits the image of a private area of any person without his or her consent under circumstances violating the privacy of that person, he shall be punished with imprisonment which may extend to 3 years or with fine not exceeding 2 lakh rupees or with both. The Act further defines transit, capture, or private area and publishes. Further, publishing or transmitting obscene material in electronic form is punishable. Publishing or transmitting of material containing sexually explicit, etc., are punishable. Publishing or transmitting of material depicting children in the sexually explicit act, etc., in electronic form is punishable. The Act gives power to the central government or the state government to issue direction for interception or monitoring or decryption of any information through any computer resource. The power can be exercised in the interest of sovereignty or integrity of India, defense of India, security of the state, friendly relations with foreign state, or public order, or for preventing incitement to the commission of any cognizable offense relating to this act. Also, under Section 69A, central government or any of its officer, especially authorized by it in this behalf, has the power to issue directions for blocking access by the public. The Act under Section 69B authorizes the central government to enhance cybersecurity and for identification, analysis, and prevention of intrusion or spread of computer contaminants in the country for cybersecurity by authorizing any agency of the government. The Act provides extraterritorial operation of law, hence the Act shall apply to any offence or contravention committed outside India by any person irrespective of his nationality. Intermediary under the Information Technology Act is exempted from to a communication system over which information made available by third party. Human trafficking from the setup of anti-trafficking cell ATC to the issuance of comprehensive advisories. The anti-trafficking cell was set up with the objective to act as a focal point for communicating various decisions and follow up on actions taken by state governments to combat the crime of human trafficking. The comprehensive advisories are issued to all states and union territories with the objective of improving the effectiveness in tackling the crime of human trafficking and to increase the responsiveness of the law enforcement machinery. The advisories are advisories for preventing crime of human trafficking, advisories on crime against children, advisories on missing children, advisory on preventing and combating cyber crime against children. So this is of course the list of the advisories, and now I have covered three things. First thing is, what is cyber trafficking? What is trafficking, cyber trafficking, cyber sex trafficking? How it happens? Why it happens? The international architecture to handle the issues of cyber sex trafficking throughout the globe, and the Indian skeleton to handle the issue at national or domestic level. Now, in concluding remark, I would like to say something like human trafficking is both an issue of human rights as well as a matter of criminal justice system. You cannot say it's only a human rights violation. It's of course a matter of criminal justice system. Trade of women or children like an object of a sex is not acceptable. Not even a single country is ready to tolerate this grave and serious violence against women. Global government is actually concerned about this violence against women. The Supreme Court has intervened requiring the government to block pornographic website, which in itself says a lot about the impact of internet on our daily lives and the concerns of the government. Issues of sex trafficking caused by online means cannot be resolved by simply adding a single section under the existing laws or by adding any single element in existing provisions. Like we are already having provisions of sex trafficking, however, not having a provision directly of cyber sex trafficking. The problem has multi faces, and its every phase should be taken care properly. The major controlling factor is creating the liability of the service providers or the intermediaries. I would like to give an example of United States of America, who enacted a law that requires the intermediaries to take down a content providing website even if intermediary is merely providing a channel for hosting the website. So there is a requirement of such law on the same tune in India also. With these words, I will end my talk.
Ma'am?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
I'm ready to answer or respond to any queries if they are having.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Uh, I guess we don't have any questions related to the topic. There's no question being posted in the comment box also. Oh, we have Purusha, the rapporteur for today. He has a question. He's raising his hand. So,
Yes.
Purusha, go ahead. Gagan sir, you need to unmute.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ganza. Thank you, ma'am, for the detailed information on the topic. That was very helpful. Ma'am, I would like to ask you one question. Ma'am, when we practically face a situation, you and I could be a girl, when we practically face a situation where we receive certain types of messages, emails, or anything, could be pictures which are uncomfortable of any sort, what should we take ma'am, what action should we take? Should we first go to the police station or should we go to any certain departments to deal with the issue? Ma'am, what do you think would be the wisest thing to do? What are the evidence we should keep in mind, whether we should take screenshots of those materials? Ma'am, can you just guide us to that?
Thank you. Very important and relevant question with regard to the cybercrime. I a number of times noticed, or when I was going through various cases, I read that people used to delete the images. People people used to delete the messages. So first suggestion is don't get panic. Preserve the evidences, because in case of electronic crimes or cyber crimes, this important information can give the idea to the police to catch the criminals. So first, do not delete it, do not and preserve it. And initially, if you are not feeling like any threat that can affect you, then you can simply ignore the person. But if you feel like the person is continuously harassing or sending some images which are actually not acceptable to the person who is receiving, yes, you can go directly to the police station, can register an FIR. Even cyber cell are also working. In Sikkim also we have cyber cell, however not well equipped, but they can get the information and they can guide the person who is receiving such messages or mails with regard to the pornographic contents or anything which is actually, it can be of course a bullying messages, stalking messages and message, and you feel that someone is stalking and the message is bullying you, is something that can actually affect you. So in that case you can use, first do not delete, Do not, and try to preserve in all with all means. Yes, you can take a screenshot if the person have this the possibility to delete it. So screenshot will help you. Do not format your device even. Uh, I think I hope my answer is. If you need, Dr. Pramita, please unmute
Thank you.
Purusha.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Gagan sir, I guess you need to unmute all the participants. If they have any question, then they can.
Thank you, ma'am.
Well,
Thank you so
even
much, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. I have unmuted everyone. Now anyone can ask.
Thank you, ma'am.
I think that will
Thank
be
you,
a
ma'am,
good
for
option.
the answer.
Geser is also there, is raising his hand. Geser, go ahead if you have any question. Geser, are you out there? He has raised his hand, but nobody is. I guess is having a bandwidth problem. Does anyone has a question?
Uh, a very good afternoon, ma'am.
Okay, Geser, go ahead. Yes.
Ma'am, am I audible?
Yes, you're very well audible. Please tell.
Oh, thank you, ma'am. Like since we are talking on very important topic, and I have one question for you, ma'am. It's very related to the Porosa which he had asked. Like since the victim always come from like low income and poor background, it can happen to a female or male. So like, ma'am, like when this kind of things is happening to a person, like what kind of common activities we can recognize to like the person, like that person is like human trafficking. So how can we identify by that common activities, ma'am?
I'm not exactly getting your question. You wanted to ask about victim or the criminal. How to find how to identify the victim or the criminal. What is your question?
He has unmuted himself again. Gagan sir.
Okay, I will respond to both the questions. If he is asking about the victim, uh, if you know the victim, is better to inform the police station. But how to identify the victim? We cannot give any such pattern that how to identify the victim. When it comes to cyber criminals, again, it's very much related to the psychology of a person. The person may be very confident and very used to doing these activities in general. But in case of online activities, the person will hide his profile. Okay, so you cannot find out that the person who is providing the genuine advertisement of job is actually taking the help. If a person is simply posting advertisement for the pornography or something, you can simply identify, yes, he is not he is a criminal. But if a person is genuinely posting some advertisement for job, you cannot simply identify. In that case, it is always suggested that please be careful, and whenever you are going to meet or appearing for the interviews, be careful, keep people informed, and it's always on your intuitions when you are dealing with these people. But the fake identities are like they are not disclosing their photographs, they are not providing actual information, their informations are misleading, informations are not correct. These simple activities can tell you that the person is fake, may not be cyber trafficker, maybe only a criminal, maybe someone who is taking interest. Would like to give one example of this is very important incidents, of course, an old incident. Here it was only a 15 or 16-year-old child who simply hacked the site of Baba Institute of Atomic Research Center of India, and he actually hacked this, site. Now, as per law, he is a criminal. But what happened? He did it just for the purpose of showing his friends that he has the ability to hack the sites of some important, institution of a country like India. So you cannot say he's a criminal. So guessing, or it's actually not always possible, because not always the people are criminals. There are sometimes the students. Most of the bullying incidents can tell you the picture that this happens in schools, most, not even in college, but in schools. And in schools, these school going kids like the 9th, 10th and 12th students are doing these activities. Now, whether they are cyber criminals or not, whether they are doing it only for the purpose of entertainment or with some wrong intention, that not always possible for a general or common man to identify. It always depends upon the investigative agency to find out the real character, the true character of the person doing such activities. Just in the case of online crimes or cyber trafficking, be aware, be attentive and vigilant.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. I got my answer, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I guess that is the last question. Nobody has raised a hand or nobody has posted a question in the comment box also. So with this, I would like to thank you, ma'am, for such a stimulating session. Increased use of internet is indeed the posing threat to the vulnerable section of the society. Thank you, ma'am, for deliberating in length what, how, when, and why lead the cyber sex trafficking in times of the COVID-19. It was indeed very thought-provoking session. The census that you have shared of 2019 shows highest number of missing women from Mumbai, West Bengal, etc. It is really a triggering issues and threat for Sikkim state as well, as we share a close border with West Bengal state. Even though the issues of missing children and women is a problem and issues that the state of Sikkim face also. It is sad to address that the percentage of missing is from both male and female. It is well addressed by ma'am that sex trafficking is not a concern of an individual government, but also a concern of a worldwide. Thank you, ma'am, for addressing the gathering on the cause that lead to the cyber sex trafficking, child pornography, etc., and also highlighting on the dark web such as Facebook, WhatsApp, Tinders, etc. Thank you, ma'am, for highlighting on the issues of on the use of ICTs in sex trafficking. It was indeed thought-provoking. It was indeed well addressed by our speaker, madam, that the technology has turned into a ghost to most of the vulnerable section of the society. Some issues such as fake job sites, global recruiters, site offering sex services, fake identities, entrepreneurs that leads to such heinous crime. It is indeed some of the women does not volunteers to the sex trafficking, but indeed a victim of such heinous crime. Thank you, ma'am, for addressing the problems and highlighting on the international convention to suppress and punish the predators of this heinous crime, such as UN Convention, where India is also the signatory of this convention. Thank you, ma'am, for also addressing on the UN gift, Internet Watch Foundation, virtual global trafficking, optional protocol 2 of the CRC on safety of child pornography, Council of European Convention on Cybercrime 2001. Thank you, ma'am, for addressing and correlating the issues with the statutes we have in India, that is Constitution of India, Immoral Trafficking Prevention Act, Juvenile Justice Care and Protection Act 2000, POCSO Act 2012, IPC, Indian Penal Code, we say, IT Act, etc. We like to, with this, I like to end with the note that has been rightly said by our speaker, madam, that is internet technology safe place for all. Thank you, ma'am. Now I request our development officer, Ms. Sisti Rantiprai, to kindly propose vote of thanks.
Thank you, Promita, ma'am. Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am, you are.
Okay. So it is with pleasure that I'm putting forward the vote of thanks on behalf of ICFA University Sikkim. The webinar today has concluded indeed on a very enlightening note, and I'm sure that every one of us has learned a great deal from the address put forward by our speaker, ma'am. And for this interesting session, I thank and I'm truly grateful to Dr. Nidhi Saxena, Assistant Professor, Department of Law, Sikkim University, for having kindly consented to take time from a busy schedule and giving us the opportunity to hear her address. I also thank everyone, all the participants who attended this webinar, and I am very confident that this session has helped each of you to understand the discussions on the prevailing cybersex trafficking in the times of COVID-19. I would also like to thank our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Sir Dr. Jagannath Patnaik, for his guidance and constant support for this webinar. And last but not the least, I would like to put forward my thanks to the entire IUS family for their unceasing support. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, ma'am.